So you went to school to be a lawyer, right? So I guess what did that whole process like, and how did you fall into that?
Well, it's not really something that you can fall into. It is something you kind of have to do relatively deliberately because it's competitive, right? Um, there's so the process. If anybody is aspiring to become a lawyer, you can. I mean, you can do it. Typically people do it when they're young, but you can certainly do it when you're older, and the process is a little different there. If somebody has questions about that, they can certainly ask me. But let's talk about the process I went through. So I went to university, and I was getting quite good grades, and that's one of the things that you need to get into law school. And I was taking a political science undergrad, and I took a course on international law, which is kind of funny because it's international law is neither truly international nor truly law. It's really kind of one of those funny things that sits at the intersection between politics and law because there is no like international court. Well, there is, but it doesn't have an army backing it, right? It has no ability to enforce any of its rulings. So, any rulings of a court like that are um, really sort of pronouncements that don't have any force behind them. Uh, and uh, and so, like all of the interactions that concern like relationships between nations are governed probably as much by politics as they are by law, but there's still a bunch of law in it. And so I took this course and it explored that, and I found it fascinating. And I really got into case law and trying to understand that sort of thing and legal concepts. And decided I wanted to go to law school, so I studied for the LSAT, and I did well on that. And that's the other thing that you need to need in order to get into law school is a good grade on something called the LSAT, which is the law school admissions test, LSAT. Um, and if you have those two things, then you apply to law school, and if you're lucky or good or a combination thereof, then you get in. And I got into. I'm Canadian, so I applied to Canadian law schools because it's better if you want to practice law in Canada to go to a Canadian law school. And I
Right.
got into one of the better law schools in the country. And I mean, one of the nice things about Canada is that all of the law schools, pretty much all the law schools in Canada, are pretty good. There isn't really one that we're like, oh, you went to that one. Like, if you get into a Canadian law school, it's one of the best law schools. Just kind of all of them, right? So
I'm with you. I'm
kind of
with
the
you.
way. Yeah. So I did my undergraduate degree. I actually took 5 years to do my undergraduate degree because I was wrestling competitively throughout my degree. So I was wrestling 5 nights a week, right? And so I took a slightly lighter load, just spread my courses over 5 years instead of four, and then 3 years of law school, and then you have to article for a year, which is kind of like apprenticing. Um, and Yeah, and then I kind of gravitated towards the area of civil litigation.
And we'll be pulling up some. I see
Yeah.
the hands popping up and whatnot. We'll pull some people up here for the AMA portion and argument portion here in a little bit. I just had a few questions I wanted to ask him, and then we'll get everyone started. Now,
Alrighty.
you, you were talking about your schooling, and I guess when you graduate, how long have you been doing that since you graduated?
17 years.
Okay, cool. And so from the
18, I
videos
guess.
I've seen
17
where,
since I was
oh
called,
sorry,
right? 17 since I was called, 18 since I graduated. Is the
I
apprentice
gotcha.
for a year.
And so the videos that I've seen you in, and then also the interactions we've been in, I've seen you kind of drill people into a corner, right? Where you're just asking them questions about stuff that they agree with, and you want to know about their position, and you act so innocent, and then you just drill them into a corner into special pleading or something like that. I, how long did it have you been doing that methodology prior to the YouTubes?
Like 17 years.
Okay, so you've been doing that on the religious debate spectrum for that long?
Oh, no, not on religious debate, but it's the same skill, right? Like I've been doing this to people. I've been doing this to people for, for money, right? Like on, on issues that they care deeply about that are known, intimately to them and only them, like about whether or not, you signed the contract, or, whether or not like, like exactly what happened in the car accident, right? So like, um, you know, whether we're talking about, if we're talking about your beliefs, whether that belief is, that I turned left, or, that I intended to, to add a provision about, you know, I don't know, like force majeure, or whether, whether it's like, whether you believe that God exists, it's the same thing, right? So like the
Absolutely.
skills, the skill set's the same, right?
I'm with you. Do you have any goals
Yeah.
with the YouTube?
Ultimately, my goal is to hopefully, like, the idea is that, with our increasingly polarized society, um, we end up in these echo chambers where people are, reasoning ideologically and refusing to admit the truth, and and saying things that just like patently aren't true, that everybody knows aren't true, but like regular people, at least these days, don't have the skill set required to sort of force reluctant and difficult people to face the truth. And so I'm like, well, I think what that means is like, so there is that skill sets out there, right? And it's just one that I happen to have. And so I'm like, I can show people how to do this, and hopefully that can make it so that we can start to have conversations, and like we can kind of put an end to alternative facts, and we can have more rational conversations, and we can improve our discourse, whether that be political discourse or religious discourse or scientific discourse. uh, my goal is really to arm people with the ability to get to truth so that we can be arguing about them. And
Right.
so, you know, um, recently there was a YouTuber named Dan Stern Cardinal who runs a channel called Creation Myths. Great channel. Everybody should go subscribe to Dr. Dan's channel. Um, and he was saying like he uh, had watched a bunch of my content, and had used some of the technique that I talk about, uh, just to sort of make sure that his points were landing. And he was like, it made a really big difference. And I'm like, that's why that's what I'm talking about, right? That's what I'm hoping for, is that people can take what I'm talking about. And it's not, you don't like, I'm not saying do it like I do it, because it, you have to be yourself. That's an important part of it, right? But you can take these little nuggets, and it can be like 90% of it can be the way that you've always done it. And then there'll just be these little moments where you can tell, like the light bulb goes off, and you're like, this person is being deliberately evasive. And, I remember what it is that I need to do in order to pin them down on this. And then the conversation can move forward again. That's my goal
Right.
ultimately, is to facilitate that discourse.
Right. So you're trying to elucidate to them the self-evident truth of our shared naturalistic atheistic reality that's been revealed to all of sound mind through both natural and special revelation, it sounds like, right?
So typically, yes. I mean, I wouldn't put it that way, but yeah, like the techniques that I'm talking about don't really work to obfuscate issues. And like, I couldn't convince you, for example, to become a creationist with what I with with my with what I do, right?
Right.
Like,
Because it's
because it doesn't,
disconnected from what we see.
right, because it, like, what I do only works in terms of pushing people towards truth. It doesn't work in terms of pushing people away from it. It just kind of breaks down if you try and do that. And that's a good thing, right? Because that means that, you know, like the people that I disagree with, if they use the same stuff on me, it's gonna make me a better person, not a worse person, right? Like it'll, there's I'm sure I have blind spots, right? But those are the places they're going to attack me. It's not going to be, like somebody's not going to go and use, things that I taught them to go spread white supremacy, because it doesn't really work for that. Right?
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Now, when do you feel like you'll have accomplished your goals with that, or will is there a spot you can reach where you're like, I've accomplished something big here?
I don't know. Maybe when I'm on Kimmel.
Do you think he'd bring atheist or agnostic debater and Kimmel?
I don't think so. No. But I think that um, if the techniques that I'm using, become widespread and become, more common use within at least, like, the science debate sphere, and the even the religious debate sphere. That's kind of my goal, and I'm not sure that there's a good way to measure that. Right? I think it's just going to kind of be a feel sort of a thing. You know, when people start saying the things that I say back at me, you know, and where the when the things that I'm trying to say become common knowledge, become obvious, and when people are like, oh, yeah, we already know that, then that'll be good. I'll have made myself redundant, and that will be a success. They say it is the burden of every great teacher to be surpassed by his students. So that's my goal, is that, I will create debaters out there who are better than me.
I'm with you. Now, we don't have to talk a lot about religion, although maybe somebody in the audience will bring it up. But
Sure.
honestly, I thought you were an atheist coming into this, and you corrected me. So tell us a little bit about your position, because I guess you lean more towards agnosticism. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. I've always kind of preferred the idea of agnosticism, because it's like, I don't know. I don't know. There's no evidence either way as to whether or not there's a spiritual beyond the physical. So, like, there may be, and I'm a lawyer, right? Show me the evidence, right? I'm driven by the evidence, and there is no evidence. There's no evidence either way, right? That and even like atheism still requires, like, it requires a degree of belief without proof, right? Like, the best you can do is say that that God is not required in order to explain this thing, and that generally speaking, if it's not required, it's probably not there. And that's true, but that doesn't mean necessarily that it's not there. It just means it probably isn't. And I'm with you on, like, right now, probably isn't, but it could be. You never know, right? So, I mean, like, I'm open to the idea that there is a God. And if somebody is able to convince me that, that there's good reason to believe in a God, like, I'd be tickled pink, right? I'd love for that to be true. I'd love, to be able to say, I'm going to heaven and I'm never going to die, and all that kind of stuff. That'd be great. I, you know, I'd love to believe that. I just don't, you know, like,
Right.
that's just, there isn't evidence of that at this point. So I'm open to it. I'd be more than happy if it showed up. Right now, I just kind of say, like, it's not even like I reserve judgment. It's, I'm still in the process of making my judgment. I'm still in the process of collecting the evidence.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Now,
I mean, some people call that like an agnostic atheist, and like, there's, there's hairs to be split about, is there really such a thing as an atheist versus, like, should I be properly calling myself an atheist? I've always used the term agnostic, and I like the term agnostic. So because I like that, that's what I use.
I gotcha. Yeah, and I mean, obviously, that term varies a little bit, or those terms vary a little bit depending on who's using them, right? And so it
Yeah, I think
depends
somebody
on
in the
what
theist
exact
experience
definition,
room
right?
called me. Yeah, somebody in the theist experience said to me, they're like, so basically, you're Matt Dillahunty. And I said, I'm Matt Dillahunty, but I'm not as stubborn. Like, I'm more,
Gotcha.
I'm I don't think I would require the same level of, like Matt Dillahunty has said, like, you know even if like God came down himself and showed up and looked me in the face, and everybody that I knew believed in God, and he said, I'm God and I'm real, like I'd still be like, well, maybe I'm hallucinating, maybe there's an alien or something. At that point, I'd be like, yeah, okay, you know what? You're God, you're real, right? I wouldn't be like Matt Dillahunty would still be like, oh, I'm still skeptical. No, no, like if every test that we did, if we subjected the God claims to the same level of evidence as we do every other claim and it passed, then I would accept it the same as I accept any other claim. You know,
Right.
like I accept that the world is round. If God were proven to the same standard as the claim that the world is round, I would believe it. I wouldn't be like, well, you never know.
If you're
Sure,
convinced, you're
right?
convinced, is what you're saying.
I'm saying that there's a reasonable level of evidence that could be shown to me that would convince me, right? Like I
I'm with
am
you.
persuaded. I'm not stuck in my ways in terms of whether or not that exists. But right now, I haven't seen anything which I think even approaches like the standard of evidence that you would use in a courtroom, right? Uh, that's probably a good proxy for the kind of standard of evidence that I would expect.
Is there any good evidence or any good arguments that have thrown you off or pushed you off to the side and made
Uh,
you go back to the drawing board?
uh, like for God?
Yeah, anything at all, or any arguments
I mean, I
about
don't know.
DNA, or I know you've been dealing with evolutionary arguments a
Oh,
lot, or evolutionary related
oh,
arguments a lot.
the evolutionary and science-based arguments for God? No, not at all. They're not very strong at all.
Yeah, I haven't
I
either.
haven't seen
I was just
anything. I
curious.
haven't seen anything on that. Like the more closely I look at, uh, the more closely I look at biological evidence for God, the less convinced I am in the existence of God. You know,
Oh, so the
like
more
you're
you
better off.
debate this, the more you get pushed away from it.
Well, you know what? Not every time. But they. You know what's funny is that the people um, who are the best at sort of making me kind of wonder and reconsider and vacillate and go, maybe you never know, are the people who are nice about it, right? Not the people who start preaching hellfire and brimstone, and not the people who try and beat you over the head with moralistic arguments and tell you that your worldview is invalid and that everything you know is a lie. Like those sorts of people, like, I mean, they make me want to fight them, right? It's the people that are like I can sympathize with you, and I care about other people too, and and there's room you know in this tent for everybody, and those sorts of things where you're like, maybe maybe there's something. But yeah, the people who want to get into the get into it and battle with cold steel. I don't find those arguments very persuasive.
I'm with you. Do you hold any interesting philosophical positions?
Well, I mean, I'm sure that I think they're interesting. um, I think you need to be more specific. I mean,
Just
which
about
branch of thought?
anything related to, I don't know. There's so many philosophical topics. I was just curious if there was one that, when I said that, would stick out to you, and you'd be like, "Oh yeah, I think this," or idealism, or whatever. Right?
Oh, I mean, I've got like I've gotten into it on a wide variety of from the existence of the mind to moral systems to theological debates about the nature of God to the existence of the historicity of the Bible to the man and bear debate, to feminism, to transgender issues, to um, you know speed limits and playground zones. I mean, I've I've run the gamut. You know.
I'm with you. So, any interesting political stances you hold?
Um, I mean, I think that my political stances are. I try to stay fairly centrist, fairly middle of the road when it comes to politics. Um, so I would say my politics are going to be interesting, depending on who you are. The more extreme you are, the more likely we are to fervently disagree with each other. Um, and even if you don't have an extreme position, I'm sure we can find something to disagree about because I'm kind of a contrarian, and I always tend to be the most extreme person in a room. Uh, you know, but towards the center.
I'm with you.
In a right leaning room, I tend to be the most left leaning person in the room. In a left leaning room, I tend to be the most right leaning person in that room.
I feel the same way. I totally get what you're saying. I was left 15 years ago, and now I'm center, and my position is exactly the same, right?
Yeah, I feel like I've changed. I've stayed the same, and the world has changed around me. I feel like
That's
I've drifted
exactly what
left.
I'm saying. Now, do you have a favorite dinosaur? I'm sure you've done a lot of research on dinosaurs recently with some of these debates.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, uh, I don't know if I can narrow it down to one, but I could probably give you a couple. I really like Pachycephalosaurus. I think that's a cool dinosaur. I like Styracosaurus, and I really like Ankylosaurus. Ankylosaurus was my favorite as a kid, and so that still holds a near and dear place in my
What was the second one that you named?
Styracosaurus.
Yeah, which one was that?
Uh, it's a Triceratopsian dinosaur.
Ah,
Um,
gotcha.
so like if you look at the dinosaurs as they speciate, the Triceratopsians kind of split into two groups. Um, there's the ones that have really big horns above their eyes and kind of a small one on their nose, and there's ones that have kind of small ones over their eyes and a really big one on their nose. And the Styracosaurus is one of the second kind. But then the other cool thing about it is that so it doesn't have very big horns above its eyes, but then on its frill, it's got like all kinds of spikes on its frill. It looks like this thing that could like looks kind of like a giant uh what I don't know like it could shred you like a wood chipper kind of thing.
I'm
But
with you.
actually, it couldn't because like that whole frill and all those horns and spikes and everything are actually quite delicate, ironically. So the sort of the more um, plain looking Triceratops with its smoother, with a smoother frill and its smaller number of horns was actually a much more effective fighter. But Styracosaurus is just cool, man.
Right, I'm with you. Yeah, Triceratops was one of my favorites. I just didn't know the division there, right? Now, are you scared of anything?
Failure, embarrassment, the
Well,
usual.
why is that?
I don't know. You just don't want to let people down.
All right. Well, let's not
Just
let
mean,
people
just means
down.
sure.
So we'll go ahead and move into the AMA. We don't have anybody who's raised their hand just yet, so if anybody wants to raise their hand, feel free to raise it. We'll pull you right up. This is going to be a Q&A session. Feel free to debate, ask Mr. Anderson questions, whatever you'd like to do. He's a big YouTube star, so I'm sure he's got tons of great information to share. As he's already covered some fun stuff. Ben and Jen is up first.
Hey, how you doing?
Pretty good. I never heard of you before. How do I join your YouTube channel?
Yeah, it's called Mr. Anderson Crosses. Ah, nice to meet you.
I like to say everybody's agnostic, whether or not they realize it. Because I think of A as no and Gnostic as knowledge. So like nobody has knowledge if there's a God or no God ever. It's like I don't know how you define
Sure.
agnosticism.
Sure. Yeah.
Cool. That's about all I had. And somebody else could come up.
Cool. Thank you for coming up. We've got Bones of Doom. Sounds very ominous.
Interesting.
Indeed, very ominous.
How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you, sir?
Good. Good. What's on your mind?
So you've been debating a lot of like people with regards to creationism and flat Earth. If you had to
Yep.
debate anyone
And preceptors.
in that, oh yeah, and preceptors, but if you had to debate anyone, like who's like your number one, like I want to get on that guy's case. Like who would you debate?
I think James Tour would be interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that would be interesting.
I did see the video that you did on reviewing Dave and James Tour debating.
Yeah, I think that would be pretty cool. I'm thinking about getting. I haven't contacted him. I'm thinking about maybe Pine Creek Doug. I think he might be an interesting opponent.
I haven't heard of that guy actually. What does he do?
Mm-hmm. He's an atheist, but he's a cultural Christian. So it's he's big into like anti-trans stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that'd be interesting. Um, yeah, I think those are the ones I have in mind now. But we'll see. There's always somebody new on the horizon. So I like challenging opponents, right? So like the tougher the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I
Right?
agree.
I want somebody that can give me a run for my money, that knows their stuff and is wily. Right.
Right. Plus, it gives you a chance to hone your skills even further.
Yeah, and show what I can do, right? Like the better they are, the better I can. You know, it's like wrestling, right? Like you wrestle your best match against a strong opponent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's all I had.
Cool.
Thank you, Bones. We've got Rampaging Reaper up next. All right. Well, while you figure that out, we'll move on to the next one. Feel free to raise your hand. Sticks, I invited you up.
Exactly what that
raising my
balance
hand,
is.
so I'm just gonna fire another question. Are you guys okay with that?
Yeah, shoot.
I viewed your YouTube channel. I don't see you debating many Muslims. It's more of Christians, flat earthers, feminists here, there. So is
I
it
don't think I've debated any Muslims actually.
you haven't?
No.
So is it more of like whoever comes forth I'll debate, or is it you're picky?
Like typically, I mean, I've gone into a couple of rooms and just kind of taken all comers, and like today, obviously, we're taking all comers, but generally speaking, I've been like setting up, formal or semi-formal debates, where I'm going in because there's a prominent person who I think has, an issue with their view, right? So, I haven't really set my sights on any Muslims to date. That doesn't mean they're immune from my gaze, but it just hasn't been something that I've specifically dug into. If that makes any sense.
Great, that will be all. Thank you.
I was hoping we would have our first Muslim debater for Mr. Anderson. Thank you for coming up. If anybody else would like to join us up here, feel free to raise your hand.
No one feeling scrappy tonight, huh?
Oh, we've got Reverse Camus. He's always a real fighter.
Not
right.
really. I guess I do have a religious question, but first off, I hope Taco didn't already ask this. I didn't get the first part, but
Don't worry about it.
what kind of cases do you take? Do you focus on like people who aren't religious and their liberties, or do you just take kind of whatever cases you get?
I do a lot of cases that have to do with disadvantaged groups and systematic wrongs and stuff like that. So, a lot of minorities and uh, poor people or people who are getting screwed over, you know, in a massive way. Consumer cases, uh, stuff like that. Things where the government has done something really crappy, to a whole bunch of people like that.
Oh, nice. That's noble. So you're into the whole DEI thing?
I don't know what that is, so I guess not. I'm Canadian, so
Uh, diversity, inclusion. Uh, I don't remember what the E is, but diversity, inclusion, and something else like
probably
social
equity
justice
or
issues.
equality. Yeah, I do a lot of social justice kind of stuff.
All right. And then, how willing are you to open up to the God thing? Like, trying to do stuff without evidence. Like, how much evidence do you need? Like, are you into like stuff like meditation that it is kind of somewhere in between physicalism and spiritualism?
No. Meditation. I don't know. I tell you what. Show me at the a reasonable standard. Like I'm a lawyer, so a good starting place. I don't know. Like I'm gonna pull out the old Matt Dillahunty line, right? I don't know exactly what evidence would convince me, but God surely does. But I can tell you, if you want an idea, the kind of evidence that would convince a court is probably a good place to start. Like I would judge God
All
by the
right.
same standards and judge any other claim.
The bar for evidence would be unfalsifiable. You've almost, to use a word of someone else, you've almost got to have a confirmation bias with it. But I prefer to say testing a hypothesis. But you've got to have a little bit of faith in it. Like, how much faith are you willing uh, to go to believe in a God, or is that just something that you don't even really want to entertain?
Uh, I mean, I don't think that there would have to be a very compelling reason for me to like basically what my understanding of faith is a lowering of an evidentiary bar, right? Where you're requiring less evidence and then you're believing something to be true without that evidence, you know? So like I'm not like I don't think that any Christian um believes in God with no evidence. I don't think that that's the case. Are you a Christian?
I'm a Baha'i.
Okay. So as a Baha'i, like do you have any like do you have at least say like a personal sense of connection to the spiritual through meditation or something like
I'd say I do. And
that? Okay. Would
also,
you consider that
so
to be evidence?
I'd consider it evidence that wouldn't really pass the standard that you have, but I consider it good enough evidence for
Sure.
me.
It is evidence on my standard, and to a legal standard, it is evidence. It's just not strong evidence, right? But it is evidence. So you have some evidence for your belief already, and I bet you if we talked some more and we drilled down, that you could come up with more examples of more evidence. And I bet you could probably give me some rather elaborate, robust instances where you felt spiritual presences and you have rational reasons to believe the things that you believe. Is that fair?
Yeah. Um, I'd back off the rational a bit. I think that if like one of the
Well, do you
things
think
that
you
I
could
read and
believe
I believe,
if you if you didn't
oh,
if you didn't have if you didn't feel the spiritual connection that you feel when you're meditating, do you think that you would still believe?
no.
Okay. So, do you think that that's a reason to believe that feeling? Is it a reason to believe?
Yeah.
Okay. So, in your mind, then, is that rational?
I think rationality would be including all possibilities. And
That's not
the
the question
more
I
I've
asked.
gotten into it, the more I've realized, oh, I need to look at things a bit more critically. The more I talk to people who don't really believe,
Yeah. I
but
guess what
it's
I'm
enough
saying
for
is that
me.
I would suggest to you that even though the line of reasoning and the evidence which you accept might not be as rigorous as other people's, that it is reasoning and that it is evidence to you. And that by that definition, your faith is rational, right? It's just a question of what's your standard of proof and what evidence are you willing to accept and what's your line of reasoning. And for those, you and I are different. That doesn't make me better or worse and doesn't make you better or worse than me. It's different. That's why I still
Oh,
respect your religion.
that's a
You know,
nice way of looking at it.
there's lots of
And
atheists. There's lots of atheists who would say like, "Oh, you're stupid for believing in anything," right? I don't think
yep,
that.
I've
I don't think
met
that's
him.
fair. Oh yeah, for sure. I don't think that's fair. I think that you could be wrong, right? And I'm not saying that you are, but you could be, and I could be, right? And we could have a civil discussion about what those reasons are that you have, what your line of reasoning is, what the evidence is that you feel, whether or not I can experience it as well, and whether or not it satisfies me to come to my own conclusions and make my own decisions. And all of those things are fair, right? And that, in my mind, is how you have a respectful and productive conversation about deeply held personal beliefs.
Absolutely. Yeah. Have you investigated any of the spiritual at all, or
If
what?
by the spiritual you mean like apart from Christianity, my experience is primarily in Anglicanism, which is the Church of England. Because I'm Canadian, that's a thing up here, right?
Oh, all right.
So that's my primary exposure to the spiritual. Um, I'm aware of, and have some past like I know that Bahrain is a religion that I believe originates in India, but I think that it's actually a conglomeration of a number of different faiths. It's kind of an amalgamation of them. Is that right?
What is? Oh,
Bahrain?
Baha'i.
Oh, sorry,
Baha'i.
Baha'i?
It
Bahrain's a
started in
country.
Iran.
So, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Was I right about any of it?
Is there what?
Was I right about any of it?
I just heard that you thought that it started in India, which was wrong. It started in Iran. What other stuff did
Okay.
you say?
I said that it's got kind of a combination of a number of different religions in it.
Oh yeah, it is pretty omniist in that regard.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. There's a really big church, a Baha'i church in India that I
Oh
visited
yeah,
once. And that's why.
the Lotus Temple, I think.
That's the one. That's the one. Yeah, so that's why I got that mixed up.
But yeah, in terms of investigating these things,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, I'm a big believer in science, and I if there was empirical evidence of some of those religion, like I mean, I've looked at like Chinese traditional healing and homeopathy and stuff like that, and uh, you know, I think that I'd probably be more likely to run a class action lawsuit against them than I would be to join them.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, I definitely don't have the stomach to do that kind of stuff. But anyways, I think those were my questions. Thank you for taking them.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you for coming up. And then that was a nice conversation. We've got Stu Griffin up next. I was hoping Barthologist would come back up here. That would be a lively discussion.
But a
It
fruitless one,
would.
I think. Would have been
Not
more
at
just
all. I
topic.
spoke with that guy just yesterday.
Well, forgive me, I'm not that up to speed. Um, my question was, you mentioned that you would be convinced by the standard of evidence normally allowed in law. And I
I
think a lot
think
of
I
people,
probably would. I'm
sorry,
not sure. Yeah. Go ahead.
maybe I should clarify. Beyond a reasonable doubt. Not
Not
preponderance, not
even.
clear and convincing, beyond a reasonable doubt.
I think preponderance would probably be sufficient for me.
Okay, see, there's the hot take we were looking for earlier, Taco. So, um, my question was, why, as a lawyer who deal, and maybe I'll lead you with the question a bit, why, as a lawyer who deals with all of the most important affairs we have, why would you use that processes, the legal processes, standard of evidence when evaluating these claims?
Lead me more.
Doesn't it seem wise to use the standard of evidence that we use in all of our most important and litigious acts to evaluate some of the most important questions we're facing? Like we would hold, if we said it would be the same standard of evidence, debating billion-dollar corporate mergers, doesn't
Hmm.
that seem about as important, if not less important, than the existence of a God and objective reality and
Sure.
objective morals?
Sure.
And so, to some people who hear I use a legal standard and not like some philosophical standard, does this kind of track with why you would use that standard as opposed to like a philosophical
What philosophical
pontification?
standards are we talking about?
Apologists have come up with as many standards as there are apologists.
Yeah. I mean, one of the interesting things is you said, like, why wouldn't you use a higher standard? Wouldn't you use maybe the standard that they use in billion-dollar cases?
Yeah.
What standard do they use in a billion-dollar case like that? Let's say, let's say we've got a dispute about, who's telling the truth regarding, um, I don't know, the invention of a key piece of technology. This person
I love
says they
movie.
invented it. That person says they invented it. What's the standard?
I haven't taken evidence yet, so I'll tell you in about 6 months. But
Well, what's the
typically,
standard in a criminal case?
I think it's so long as a jury, a bunch of your peers are convinced by it, whatever convinces them
Well,
is.
no, you know this one, right? This is the cloud. What's the standard in a criminal case?
Oh, beyond a reasonable doubt.
Beyond a reasonable doubt, which means like what is a As a percentage, what would you say?
Oh,
How sure should the jury be? This is like a not really like, because you don't actually, the juries don't actually assign percentages to their certainties, but like if you're explaining this to somebody, on the street, and they're like, well, what does beyond a reasonable doubt mean?
as
What does it
certain
mean?
as you would be when conducting the most important affairs of your day-to-day life.
So 100%?
If that's what people feel like they conduct their real life as, but I don't think anyone
Well,
would
is that
say
what you
100%.
think that people conduct their real life as? So what does beyond a reasonable doubt mean?
Whatever 5 people on the Supreme Court say it is.
The Supreme Court's not this, because this isn't official, right? Like the
Yeah,
Supreme Court will never use a percentage,
no, they would
right? Because
never,
they don't
but they.
want, they would, right? So you're not going to find this in the case law. Practical.
Oh, I know, but they will adjudicate when something is objectively unreasonable, or I guess
Sure.
not overturned when courts do act reasonably. So
hmm
there are some bounds. You can hold
I'll give you,
unreasonable
I'll give you,
doubts.
I'll give you a kind of, yeah, you can hold unreasonable doubts, because
I,
it's always possible that aliens came down and they're the ones, and killed the man and put the blood on your hands and took off again. Like that's possible. I can't rule it out, right? Or
yeah, so
the God, the spirit, right?
yeah.
Those are not reasonable doubts, right? Reasonable doubts are ones that have that scintilla of evidence, right? The air of plausibility,
Oh, there's
right?
Scalia.
Yeah, yeah. Just looking for
Okay,
my chinchillas, right? My chinchilla of evidence. That's illegal.
okay. Well, thank you for
But
elucidating
think
what
of it
legal
like,
standard you use.
well, yeah. Think of it like 90% ish, right? If you want kind of a rough and ready term, that's what beyond a reasonable doubt. But we don't use that when we're settling disputes where there's competing evidences, right? There's one side and there's innocence at stake, and we want to make sure that we don't send innocent people to jail. Like we'd rather let 10 guilty people go free than send one innocent person to jail. That's like the degree to which we err on the side of caution when it comes to people's liberty, right? But when you're weighing two competing claims where you're like, one isn't good and the other isn't bad, and we don't have an inherent bias towards one that we want to institutionalize, which is basically what you're doing with the presumption of innocence, is you're institutionalizing a bias, right? So when there isn't a bias built in, what standard do you think we use?
I would, if there's not a standard built in, I guess it
There's
does
not a
kind of come
bias
back to
built
well, for a trial, I
in. Yeah,
suppose it
there's
would
not a
be
bias built
preponderance of the evidence. Yes.
in. And what percentage would you say that is?
Oh, that's 50% and 1 iota more.
Yeah, 50% plus one. And that's what I would say is probably that, and that's the civil standard. That's what you would use to judge a multi-billion-dollar case. That's what I think, as a starting point. That's why I think that, it's reasonable to assess, you know, any given belief where there isn't an inherent bias, where there isn't a built-in bias on purpose.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Of course. Good luck in your studies.
Thank you for coming up. Looks like Ben and Jen has another question.
Yeah, I just have a tactic I wanted to discuss. It might be fun. I don't know if you like it or not. It's when I
Go
talk to
for it.
theists. I was just thinking of this recently, to just stop them at zero before they get to anything at all, and say that faith is agnosticism. It's like, otherwise it would be called knowledge. And what would you think of that?
I don't understand it.
Like, if you have faith, it's like faith is belief with for no reason except for spiritual apprehension. And so it's basically, to me, faith is guessing. And you could basically stop a theist in their tracks from the get-go. They can't even get to square one without showing that they have something to believe in at all. Like, just they can't go anywhere without
Tell you what,
saying
I'm gonna
from the
pretend to
beginning they're
be
guessing.
I'm gonna pretend to be a theist for a second. Run it on me. Go for it.
Okay, you would have to start off by saying that you believed in God, I guess.
I believe in God
Well, okay, why would you believe in God?
because I have a moral intuition that God is true and strong and deeply held, and I consider that to be sufficient evidence to ground my belief because I have a degree of faith.
Okay, and I would say that that's just a guess because that's faith. You're guessing. You have an intuition, so therefore you think something. You're just guessing.
Right. I understand that you think that. You're wrong, but I understand that you think that. So that's
Yeah,
okay. You know what? We'll find out. You'll know when we get to heaven, and you'll regret not listening to me.
the Pascal's wager. Yeah, yeah. I just thought it was a tactic that we could use against them to stop them to like. I don't know. Maybe I don't know if
Well, try.
anybody even listened to
Try
it.
it.
So.
Try it. Go for it. Try it. Try again.
Okay.
I'm a deist.
I would just have to say, okay, something like this. If you can list one reason to believe any religion, I'll join it.
Okay. One reason to believe any religion is that it increases social cohesion. Now, I'd like you to become a Christian. Go.
Right, I get that, but that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking something to actually believe
Oh,
in
so
as
now
a
you're
reason
not a man of
to
your word.
join, but not believe it.
Oh, well, I mean, it is also a reason to believe in. But
Oh well, I
you
guess we're
want
getting
you
down
want
to
a
the
personal.
definitions and semantics. I'm like
You
an
want to
actual reason to
so
believe
what
in.
is it you want? So what do you want? You want a personal reason to believe in, or you want a rational reason to believe in? What kind of reason do you need in order to become a Christian?
Something just that is totally undeniable. Something scientific. Somebody won the Nobel Prize for showing a reason to believe in a religion. Maybe just something totally undeniable.
Oh, you want something scientific. So that's different than what you asked for before. So now you're changing the
Well,
goal.
any
You're
reason.
moving the
Well, that
goalpost.
would be a reason. Like something that's a reason that's not scientific. It's not undeniable. Wouldn't be a reason at all. I don't think.
Well, it would, of course, still be a reason. It just wouldn't be an undeniable scientific reason. Those are new criteria that you just inserted because you didn't want to join that religion because you're just denying
Okay, to
God and
try
your
to
unrighteousness.
defend my position here, I would say that no, that you're just getting into the area of guessing at that point. Because if without concrete something to believe in, there's nothing to believe in. You're just guessing.
I'm guessing at what? I'm guessing at, like,
You're guessing in God. Like God is just a guess.
are you telling me that my spiritual experiences and the fact that I experienced the love of Jesus in my heart, you're telling me that that's not real? You know my heart better than I do?
I can ask you to show me that they're true.
You
If you
could
have
ask me to do
a
that, and I
feeling in your
wouldn't be
heart,
able to do that because I can't take you inside my heart and have you experience that I can't experience that for you. The best I could do is you could come with me to church next Sunday, and we could see whether or not you experience it too. And since you're so earnest and you're so ready to believe, given that scintilla of evidence, and since
right?
the only way that you'll be able to experience it is by coming with me to my church on Sunday, I guess that's where we're going, isn't it?
I mean, it could because I like to say I'm an agnostic seeker because I don't have knowledge of no God ever in any universe, and I don't have any knowledge of any gods presenting themselves or revealing themselves. So I'm just a
Right.
perfect little innocent agnostic seeker.
No, that's great. That's great. Yes, my church is on the, and now you're going to church next Sunday. So that didn't.
I mean, I wouldn't actually go to the church because I know it's all BS.
Well,
I've never had any reason
that's
to
not
believe in
very
any
nice.
religion. So
Well, I mean that's not very honest. You gotta, like, if you promise you're gonna go, go. But if you don't want to go, like, just tell them.
yeah,
But
okay. I just
I
wanted to
think
bring up
that
that just as a tactic,
yeah. So
possibly.
but let's go back and see if we can fix it because I'm not just a jerk. So what's the idea?
Well, the idea is to stop people from getting anywhere at all. I'm so sick of theists getting away with so much. We give them so much that they get away with presupposing so many things like presuppositional apologetics right there. You're presupposing. That's agnostic right there. That's you don't have knowledge, you're presupposing, you're guessing, having faith. It's all a guess. Guess. And I'm like, I'm sick of everybody giving them so much room, like entertaining their fairy tale all day long instead of having them show their work from 0 to 1.
So what is it that you're suggesting is the tactic?
I mean, honestly, after all these years, uh, I would just like to have anything at all. Like, give me something to believe in from any religion. I can't find any. The harder I look, the more it just becomes more and more apparent that there seems to be no religion at all that has anything that is valid. It's not a valid religion.
All right. Here's how I would go about this. I think that you have. I think there's a germ of something useful there in what you're saying. Let me just kind of try and tweak it here. Um, let's change roles. You get to be the theist now. You're gonna try and bring me to church next Sunday.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So tell me about your God. Get us started.
My God is what makes universes. It's responsible for everything. It's
Mhm.
responsible for existence itself.
Okay. And now, before I believe in your God, um, one of the things that I get hung up on is that I want evidence that I can see and touch and measure that has some degree of reality in it. That's
Oh, I
more
can
than
give you
just
that. I can give you that.
a feeling.
Absolutely, I can give you a
Physical
logical
evidence.
proof of God. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. That's one of the things. So do you think that logical proofs are physical evidence?
Absolutely, I should win the Nobel Prize for this. The Nobel Prize
You
because
should. Did
universes
you?
come from the
Has
quantum
anyone?
field, and
That's interesting, and that's not the question I asked you. Has
yeah,
anybody
it's
ever won
scientific
the
proof.
Nobel
It's
Prize?
yeah.
Has anybody ever won the Nobel Prize for showing a physical evidence when all they have is a logical proof? Are you aware of that ever happening? Ever?
I mean, I just used it. I think that I should get the Nobel Prize for saying that the quantum field is
I
God because
didn't
it makes universes.
didn't I didn't s- I didn't ask you what you thought. I asked you about what you knew.
Yeah, I
Are
know. I
you
know that
aware of any instance?
particles, matter pops in and out of existence in the quantum field, and the universe came from the quantum field. We're expanding into the quantum
All
field,
right,
so
that's
therefore the
very.
quantum
I'm going
field
to
is God.
stop. I'm going to be very rude here, sir. I'm going to stop you there because you're not answering my question. You're rambling. My
No, I
question was
was
a
showing you
simple
the
one.
case that the quantum field is where everything came from. It's God.
That's very interesting once again, sir. But the question that I'm asking you is whether you are aware of any instances where anybody has won a Nobel Prize for something to do with providing physical evidence, where all they have is a logical argument. Are you aware of any instances where that has occurred?
No, I had a friend correct me and said it would actually we'd win some other prize for that. So, but
Mhm, mhm.
we were
All
just,
right.
I mean, we're
So
just
when you
getting
told me
around
a
things.
moment ago, that 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 when you told me a moment ago that logical arguments were physical evidence, you misspoke. Isn't that right?
Logical arguments are physical evidence. Oh no, a sound argument. A sound argument is based on the truth. A sound argument, like a scientific argument. A sound argument is
All
more
right.
than just a logical argument.
All right. So, sir, you know the difference between
Yes,
a logical argument, sound or not, and physical evidence, don't you?
yes, the sound argument requires the physical evidence, like the scientific
Okay.
data, like all the scientific evidence points that the universe came from the quantum field that we're expanding into. It's omnipresent. It's
Okay.
seemingly immortal and eternal, but there's never been a
I'm going to
discovery of
stop
any
you. I'm going to be
beginning of
very
the
rude once
quantum
again.
field.
I'm going to stop you again. The question I want you to answer me is this, and it's the same question I've been trying to ask you for the last 5 minutes. Are you aware of any physical evidence which is indicative of the existence of the supernatural?
Am I aware of the evidence? Could you say that one
Are
more
you
time?
aware? Are you aware of any evidence, physical evidence, indicative of the existence of the supernatural?
No, there is no evidence of the supernatural ever. The quantum field is absolutely natural. God is natural. Everything's natural.
Okay. So in that case, I am not going to be convinced by the kinds of evidence that you have. Is that clear?
I don't know why you would reject the truth and the facts of science.
Okay. That's
we're
not the
just
question I
labeling
asked.
mere nothingness as God because it's what's responsible for everything is basically nothing.
Right.
It's next to nothing.
Right. I guess what I'm telling you is come back to me when you've got physical evidence.
I mean, I just picked my
It's,
favorite God is everyone's God,
yeah.
the quantum field.
Yeah.
Just call that God.
Yeah. No, but so you can see how my questioning was much more specific, and even though you kind of tried to run from it, it sort of narrows down to I have one specific point, right? And I'm
Yeah.
going to drill down on that point, and I'm not going to let it go, and I'm not going to be diverted. I'm
Right.
gunning for it. I'm like the Terminator,
Let's
right?
clear the confusion though. It seemed like, well, I see you're a debater and you were like, we ended up debating and I was kind of like trying to share a tactic. That was all. So, yeah.
No. I mean, this is what I do, right? So,
Right.
I mean, I'm just trying to share sort of, so in terms of your tactic where, you're saying like, look, I want, I'm not going to grant you assumptions and, I'm
Right.
not interested in your logical arguments, right? Like
Right.
that's a good tactic, right?
Right.
What I'm saying is that you need to couch it in a little bit of technique where what you need to do is you need to focus on the thing that you do want rather than the things that you don't want. And if you focus
Right.
on the thing that you do want and you stay laser focused on that and you demand it,
Right.
then when they try and give you all those things that you don't want, you can just do what I did and say, that's very interesting. It's not the question I asked you. I asked you a simple question. Do you have this? This is what I want. This
Right.
is what will convince me.
That's
You
what I've
don't have
asked for
that. I'm
years and
not.
nobody ever answers without any reason to believe any
Well, that's
religion and I'll join.
yeah. Well,
Nobody ever
that's
answers it. They
and
try to say, oh,
of
because they have
course they haven't
cookies.
because nobody. Yeah, because nobody has that evidence, right?
Right. Right.
So that's one of the reasons that both you and I are at least agnostic, right?
Right.
So so that's okay. But in terms of like a lot of times people want to get into these debates, and if you want that, then don't do what we just did, right? Because it's a debate ender. But if you want a
Right.
debate
It is.
ender,
Yeah.
then
They
that's
run away.
what we
Yes.
do.
People. Yeah. Cognitive dissonance instant. Yep. So,
Well, I mean, that's not
okay.
even
I
cognitive
shared it.
dissonance. It just
So
shuts down the debate, right? Because it's like
it
this is the
does.
only
Do you
thing I
have
want
any
to do.
recommendation of like how to approach it other than just like total like a brick wall? I mean,
Oh, have you seen my channel?
I'll watch. I just subscribed. I'm your newest. Me and JCC68 here are your newest subscribers. So,
Oh, okay. Well, you got a lot of suggestions in terms of
cool.
how to go about all that. Like, I've
Well,
got
it's awesome to have an
playlists on
attorney on our
playlists.
side. So thanks. Good to
Yeah.
meet you.
So that's my whole channel is all it's this what we've been doing.
Thank you, Ben and Jen. And then we've got Meppy.
All right.
Hi there. Hi there. How's my audio?
It's audible.
It's audible. Okay, that's perfect. I was wondering, are you familiar with the Satanic Temple and how it functions?
Uh, I'm no expert, but I'm aware of some of the basics.
I was curious about what you think about their legal strategy. I can explain if you need me to.
Uh, from what I understand, I find it extremely amusing.
Extremely what?
Amusing. I think
I'm
it's
using.
pretty
Oh,
funny.
okay. I agree. But do you think it's effective? I guess is probably what I'm getting at.
Yeah, well, in as much as look, it's very let's just so for everybody who's listening, the Satanic Temple's legal strategy is that they're actually most all of them are actually just atheists or agnostics who really don't like Christianity. And so they are essentially trolling Christianity by starting a religion that they're calling the Satanic Temple. But then, like, all of the tenets aren't like, let's bite the heads off bats and eat babies. It's just like, just be a good person and, like, here's some bunch of humanist, like principles. But we're going to call it satanic and we're going to, like, dress goth and, like, use a bunch of iconography that is very anathema to Christianity. And basically, their real point is this stuff doesn't belong in the public sphere. But because Christianity is so entrenched in the public sphere, and because there is this concept of equality of religions, they're going to say, okay, so if you want to put all this pro Christian stuff in the public sphere where I don't like seeing it, then you also have to put a bunch of this anti Christian stuff in the public sphere where the Christians Christians don't like seeing it. And if you would prefer, we're fine with neither. That's basically my understanding of the Satanic Temple's legal strategy. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think they've had some small success, but like ultimately it is just like well-funded high-level trolling, right? So it's fun, but it's not that's not the kind of law I do, right?
We got one more, Sticks.
Hello, I'm back. I just wanted to ask you. I know you are agnostic. If you were to believe in a god, would you go for a more monotheistic approach or polytheism? And why?
I don't know which one am I convinced is true?
Well, which one do you think would be more logical to you?
Well, a deist one is the most, likely candidate at this point in time because it would require the least evidence of its existence, right?
I understand.
So, yeah. So just, in case anybody is wondering what that means, I'm saying like because there isn't really any evidence that God actively interacts with the world at this point in time, um, the easiest way to convince me anyways that there is a God would be to posit a God that doesn't currently interact with the world, because then you're not going to need to prove that interaction is occurring on a constant basis. So it will require less evidence. So that would be the easiest one to convince me of. And if there's only one, then then again you're going to require less evidence. The more gods you have to prove to exist, the more work you have cut out for you, right? So I mean, a single deistic god, not even like and it may be that single deistic god is actually a member of a pantheon. Maybe there is a polytheism, but like, you know, the like you convince somebody of one god first, and then another, right? You got to start with one. So probably that would be the way to go. If but it all depends on what's true, right? Like if it turns out that it's actually true that there are many gods and that they're interacting with the world all the time and they're all around you and there's evidence for that, then prove that. Prove the thing that's true. That's your best bet.
Okay. And where have you traveled in the world?
I've been to Europe. I've been to the Caribbean. I've been to India, and I mean I've been around. I've been across Canada, and I've been to a number of places in the U.S. and I've been to Mexico. I think that's it. Oh, I've been to Hawaii. Yeah.
Great.
How about you?
Thank you.
All right. Cool.
Thank you for coming up. If anybody else would like to join Mr. Anderson up here, feel free to raise your hand. We'll give you all like 30 seconds. Maybe not that long. You want to debate someone? Iconoclast is here. I don't know if he's down for a debate, though.
Do it.
See if he's
It's
interested.
a great name, by the way. I love that name. Iconic. Unconventional eccentric who marches to the beat of a different drum.
Sorry to disappoint you guys, but I'm whooped. I've been working 2 straight days, so I'm not in debate mode tonight. Maybe,
Oh, no worries.
Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, sure. What's your pet issue? Are you like a theist? Are you like a pre-supper? Are you a flat Earth guy? What's your deal?
Oh, I'm a Christian, but I like to think of myself as a relatively sane Christian. I'm not a young Earth creationist. I think evolution is probably true. Yeah, I don't believe in the flat Earth. automatically discount anything somebody who believes in the flat Earth might have to say. So.
Well, what are we going to debate then, man? Sounds like we agree on a lot of stuff. You just happen to believe in God. Do you like to debate whether or not God exists? Is that one of your things?
No, I generally don't debate God's existence because I'm of the opinion that you can't prove God's existence, just like you can't disprove God's existence. So I find that to be kind of an effort in futility.
I mean, that's a reasonable position too. I don't know
In
whether
fact,
we're going to debate iconoclast. We're going to have to find something we disagree on first. Like, I know what they have to do.
oh, Mr. Anderson, I think I caught you on modern day debate. Not too long ago, right?
No, I've never been on modern day debate.
Who did I see you debate not too long ago? I think I stumbled across one of
I've
your
debated
videos.
on. I debated on standing for truth a few times. Took on Kent Hovind a couple times.
It might have been a Kent.
Yeah, I'm most well known for my Kent Hovind takedown because he thought it was a debate. I turned it into an interrogation for like 2 sessions of 2 hours each. It was
It'll
pretty
never cease to annoy me how some of the more popular theists make the rest of us look.
You know what they
But
say? There's a joke about lawyers. They say, you know what? 90% of lawyers give the rest of us a bad name.
well, here's a prompt we could tangle over at some point. That's not tonight. The existence of rights.
Sure, that sounds like a gutter. I could take either side of that one.
Any other,
Whichever side you believe, you're wrong.
any other questions, iconoclast?
No, sir.
Cool. He's around quite a bit, so feel free to come up. And then I guess I'll pull up Sticks one more time. What's going on, Sticks? You
I
had
just
one
have
more
a lot of
question?
questions today. My question is, as a wrestler, what muscle or joint do you see injured the most? And could you go over your wrestling experience?
Knees and concussions.
Pardon?
I said knees and concussions. Knee injuries is the joint, but in general, concussions is also a really big problem.
So with the concussions, how does that happen? Can you run through a scenario?
I could run through a personal scenario if you like. So the concussion that ended my wrestling career was in practice, and I was doing a shoulder throw, which is kind of like a sort of your classic judo throw, right? Where you spin so that your back is towards the other person, and then you like bend at the waist, bend forward at the waist as hard as you can, and they fly over top of you. Does that make sense? Can you visualize that?
Yes.
So I grab you by the arm, I turn around so that I'm facing away from you, and then I lean forward as hard as I can. And because I've got your arm, you fly over top of me. That's a shoulder throw, right? There's a different name for it in judo, but in wrestling it's called shoulder throw.
I've performed one before. Is it more of on the victim that they don't fall right?
No, here's what happened to me. Is that so I had this guy clamped his arm, spun around, and every muscle in my body, on the front side of my body is contracting in perfect sync, and every muscle on the back side of my body is relaxed. So I'm throwing myself forward with all of my strength. And he limp arms out, just pulls his arm right out of my grip like a slippery fish. And now I'm holding nothing. And I slammed my head into the mat as hard as I physically could.
Oh, because you Force transferred
because I
everything
had
forward.
nothing. Yeah, because I had nothing to slow me down or stop me. I expected there to be a big, heavy counterweight. There was nothing. Right.
So what muscles do you think someone should train the most to really counteract the injuries? Because
So
I'm doing
that
kind of
was bad,
powerlifting
right?
self training.
To
I might want to get into grappling. So
counteract concussions, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do. Stay hydrated. That's about it. Keep that cerebral spinal fluid. Don't cut weight. That's something you can do. Some people say you can, like, if you strengthen your neck, that it can help, but that might be kind of an old wives' tale, you know. Um, but some people do it. I've done it because my coaches thought that was the case. So you exercise your neck, but I mean, it's about your brain rattling around in your skull. Your neck's not going to do anything, right? There's no muscle that protects the brain. There's not one, right? So
right.
you just have to, and so I mean, it's just about being careful, right? Um, and in a lot of ways, it's about luck, right? So like, you get like that was one example, right? I've seen people get concussions from, hitting a double leg wrong, or having, or getting taken down and, like, whacking their heads going backwards as they lose their balance, or, landing on their heads or falling wrong. Having somebody fall on you wrong. There's 100 different ways, 1,000 different ways that could happen.
Really, the important thing, would you say, is technique, right?
Yes, technique is important, but it's not going to save you. What's going to save you is a partner that gives a crap about keeping you safe. So just
Yeah, because I
be
can't
careful
really
who you rep.
blast a double leg and get a concussion. Was it
You
on the way
absolutely
down?
can. You absolutely can blast a double leg and get a concussion
Was it on
if
the
your
way
head's to
down?
the side. Yeah, if you what? So like to get a concussion when you're doing a double leg, your head's to the side, and you know, and you slam your own head into the mat as you're slamming that person onto their back. I've seen it happen.
Oh, okay. So yeah, probably get a guillotine,
Right?
and then okay.
Yeah, imagine. Well, I mean, you could do it wrong, right? Like you could make the mistake, you know. So you got the person, they're in the air, they can't control anything, right? And now you're trying to bear them to the ground, and so you're trying to make sure that your shoulders in their gut, your head's on the opposite side of the body, and you overbalance too much of your weight is on the far side, and you slam your own head into the ground.
Should the injuries deter me from competing?
It happens as much in practice as it does in competition.
Okay, great. Well, thank you.
If anybody else would like to pop up here, we've got a spot. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and call it for the night. Do you have anything you want to close out with, Mr. Anderson?
Well, I think I'd just like to say thanks, Taco, for having me up. This was a lot of fun and made me feel very special, and I really enjoyed it. Thanks again.
Hey, it's a pleasure having you up here. It's always a pleasure chatting with you. The server appreciates you coming up here and chatting with us. I'm sure next time it's going to be 2 or 3 times as big. Everybody had fun, it looked like. But I really do appreciate you coming up here.